I stood at the head of the long mahogany table, fingertips resting lightly on the cool surface, the final slide of my AI-driven wealth strategy glowing behind me. The room was quiet, not the kind of silence that follows awe, but the kind that clings after something inconvenient has been said. I had just finished presenting the proposal that had kept me up for 92 hours across 3 weeks. A fully integrated, predictive financial intelligence model that could restructure our client services and finally bring Redmont and Company into the digital age. I waited for feedback, applause, even a curt nod. But what I got instead was my adoptive father's voice, sharp and dismissive. "You're not one of us, Isabella." The words dropped like ice water on my spine. For a second, I thought I had misheard, but he didn't flinch. Gregory Redmont sat at the far end of the table in his usual navy pinstripe, legs crossed, eyes steady on his tablet as if he hadn't just erased me in front of the entire board. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. He looked up then, calmly. "This company was built by Redmonts for Redmonts. You're competent, sure, ambitious even, but that doesn't make you legacy. You don't carry our blood, and that matters more than you think." To my right, Damon chuckled. Julian swirled his coffee, eyes glancing at his phone like I was just background noise. And not a single board member objected. Not Alan, my uncle by paper only, who had once told me in private that I had the most vision in the room. Not Louise from marketing, whose department I had helped modernize. Not even Charles, the COO, who owed me his last 3 high-profile client wins. They just sat there, silent, watching. "You're too idealistic," Gregory continued, as if explaining algebra to a child. "You believe technology solves everything. It doesn't. That's not leadership, Isabella. That's naivete." I couldn't speak, not because I didn't have words, but because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. Rage? Despair? Begging? "This empire isn't your birthright," he finished. That was the moment, the one that severed something inside me forever. Months, no years of late nights, unpaid work, being the first in and last out, wiped out with a single sentence. Gregory stood, straightening his cuffs, not even sparing me a glance as he moved to the door. Then came the final blow. "Pathetic girl," he muttered under his breath. "You were never the brilliant one. You just tried too hard to belong." The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow echoed louder than a gunshot. And I just stood there, frozen, feeling the eyes of the board burn into me like static. Not a word. Not a hand on my shoulder. Nothing. Back in my office, technically mine, though it still didn't bear my name, I stared at my reflection in the black monitor. Pale, tired, hollow-eyed, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I sat down, took a deep breath, and opened a new tab on my browser. They'd made one thing perfectly clear. I would never be welcome at their table. So I was going to build my own, and I would make sure it was made of glass. So one day, they'd be forced to look through it and see exactly what they'd thrown away. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, they'd stop seeing me as the charity case they adopted out of obligation. That maybe someday I'd become more than just a signature on the end of the family Christmas card, more than just the girl we took in. But that day never came. Not when I graduated early with honors. Not when I got into Stanford's MBA program with a full ride. Not even when I returned and helped double Redmont and Company's digital engagement metrics within 6 months. They gave me access, but never belonging. Every meeting, every gala, every family dinner, I was always Isabella, never Izzy, never Quinn, never ours. Damon was the heir, Julian the charmer. I was the placeholder, the eager one, the girl they paraded around when it made them look progressive, then tucked back into the corner office without a nameplate. I took every project they wouldn't touch, led every failed division they didn't believe in. I built proof of concept after proof of concept, just for them to take credit or tell me I was too idealistic. But they weren't wrong about one thing. I was trying too hard to belong. And that, more than the insults, more than the silence, was what broke me that night. I closed my office door, stared at the framed photo of us on my shelf, one I now realized had always been crooked, and began packing. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. No resignation letter with poetic last lines. No tears or slammed doors. Just a silent, deliberate extraction of myself from the dynasty that had never made room for me. 3 hours later, I was dragging 2 suitcases into a 4th-floor walk-up in Soho. The loft was small, exposed brick, uneven floorboards, and a window that rattled when the wind hit right. But for the first time, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. I pulled out my laptop, sat on the floor, and opened a blank document. Project code name, Lynx Quantum. Why the name? Because lynxes are hunters that operate in silence. Elusive, precise, patient. And quantum, because I didn't want evolution, I wanted disruption. Something they couldn't copy. Something they couldn't predict. The plan was simple. Build an AI-driven financial engine that would serve the people Redmont had always ignored. Young investors, female founders, crypto traders, immigrants, niche players. I didn't want their clients. I wanted the ones they didn't think mattered. The first few months were brutal. I coded during the day, did freelance analytics at night to pay rent, pitched to every VC who would take a coffee meeting. Most said no. Some laughed. One even suggested I bring in a male co-founder for credibility. But I kept going. I found 2 other women in a blockchain accelerator who'd been burned by legacy firms. We split rent, pooled resources, shared contacts. I traded a month of pro bono consulting for branding help. I borrowed an old server from a college roommate. Bit by bit, the system started taking shape. At one point, I had $138 left in my checking account and was living off black coffee and dollar slice pizza. But I didn't quit, because every time I thought about stopping, I heard his voice again. You're not one of us. You were never the brilliant one. Pathetic girl. So I built. And while they were busy playing golf with old clients and giving interviews about stability in a volatile market, I was writing the first lines of code that would eventually replace them, one algorithm at a time. The first client came through a podcast. A scrappy entrepreneur named Layla had heard me speak on a fintech panel about algorithmic transparency and real-time wealth management. She reached out through LinkedIn with a message that simply read, "You're saying everything I've been screaming into the void for 3 years. Can you help?" She ran a niche skincare startup focused on supply chain sustainability. The numbers were good. The story was great. But every major wealth firm had brushed her off because she wasn't established enough. I said yes before she finished her pitch. That weekend, I built a custom dashboard for her company, integrated AI modules to predict inventory cycles, and wrote a tool to track ROI on her influencer partnerships. 3 weeks later, her margins improved by 19%. She told everyone. Then came client 2, a crypto educator with a 400K YouTube following. Then a micro VC targeting underrepresented founders. Then a decentralized energy fund. Each one opened doors to 5 more. And I treated every deal like it was worth $10 million, because one day it would be. Within 5 months, Lynx Quantum had 12 active clients and enough revenue to hire 2 full-time engineers. Ria from MIT and Jordan from a failed Series B startup. Both brilliant, both previously told they were too intense for traditional firms. They fit in perfectly. The office upgraded from my loft to a co-working space in Soho. We worked through the hum of espresso machines and the clatter of MacBook keys, surrounded by the sound of people betting their lives on the next big thing. It felt right. Alive. Mine. Meanwhile, Redmont and company kept coasting on legacy. Same marble lobby. Same navy suits. Same visionless strategy. They were still securing the same contracts they always had. Retirement portfolios, old money trusts, government-backed bonds. Their brochures hadn't changed since 2010. Their client base was aging, and their digital division was a joke. A few interns managing spreadsheets under the title AI Innovation. But they weren't worried, because in their eyes, no one worth noticing was leaving. At least not yet. And I wanted to keep it that way, for now. We flew under the radar intentionally. No press. No LinkedIn noise. Our website was bare bones on purpose. Just a logo, a contact form, and a line of code running in the background that only the curious could find. It said, "Legacy doesn't build the future. Precision does." By the 8th month, we were managing over $38 million in client assets, quietly, efficiently. And still, no one at Redmont had noticed. Then came the moment I knew we were getting close. I walked into the Global FinTech Networking Night at the Conrad Hotel, wearing a borrowed blazer and zero expectations. I just wanted to listen, to gauge where the industry's attention was shifting. Halfway through the cocktail hour, I overheard a venture partner, someone who used to golf with Gregory, mention our name. "Lynx Quantum," he said, swirling his drink. "They're doing something different. I don't know who's behind it, but the output is terrifyingly good." I froze, not out of fear, but recognition. It was happening. We weren't just functional anymore. We were visible. That same week, Damon Redmont posted on LinkedIn bragging about Redmont and Company's continued dominance in digital wealth strategy. He used the hashtag #InnovateForward. The irony almost made me choke. The next day, a junior advisor from Redmont applied for a job with us using a personal Gmail account. I didn't recognize the name at first, but Jordan did. "He's one of theirs," he said. "Been with them 4 years." I stared at the application. Not yet, I thought. We weren't ready to reveal ourselves. Let them sleep. Let them believe they were untouchable. Because when they finally woke up, the clients they thought they owned would already be gone. The first real blow landed on a Monday morning. I was on my second cup of black coffee, reviewing projections for Q2, when Harper, my assistant, walked into the office holding her iPad like it was a lit match. "You're going to want to see this," she said. It was a press release. Redmont and Company had just lost the Eastbrook government pension contract. That alone would have been a shock. Eastbrook was a $3.2 billion fund Redmont had serviced for over a decade. But the part that made Harper's voice tremble was the last paragraph. "The contract has been awarded to Lynx Quantum, citing superior analytics, real-time transparency, and next-gen performance optimization." I didn't smile. I just exhaled. This was the beginning. The Eastbrook contract had always been a formality for Redmont, re-signed every 3 years with nothing more than a handshake and a catered lunch. Gregory once bragged at a family dinner that he could secure that deal, half-drunk, with a broken wrist. Apparently, all it took to lose it was a group of outsiders working through the night in a windowless Soho office. The fallout was swift. Redmont's press team scrambled to frame the loss as a strategic shift, but behind the scenes the panic was palpable. Internal Slack leaks reached industry forums. Their top PR director resigned 2 days later. One of their senior analysts, someone I'd once watched Gregory berate over dessert, slid into our DMs with a simple message: "I'm ready." We hired her by the end of the week. Then came the hedge fund. Vindex Capital, a mid-tier player with ambitions of becoming the next BlackRock, had been working with Redmont for portfolio modeling and derivative analytics. They'd approached us quietly under an NDA, wanting a second opinion on their risk models. We didn't just give them a second opinion. We rebuilt their entire predictive structure from scratch using machine learning fed with global real-time data. It was like giving a cassette player a Bluetooth upgrade overnight. They dropped Redmont within the quarter. Still, Redmont remained oblivious to who was behind the hemorrhage. Their quarterly town hall was full of vague reassurances and finger-pointing. I watched the live stream from our new office, now a full floor above a boutique coffee shop in Tribeca. Our logo gleamed behind me in frosted glass as I muted the screen and turned back to my team. "Now," I said, We aim higher. We began targeting high-profile accounts, the legacy portfolios that Redmont bragged about in every investor deck. Not with marketing, not with price slashing, but with performance. Our platform outperformed theirs by measurable margins in every backtest. We didn't talk about it publicly. We just let the results speak. And the market started listening. Industry analysts began asking questions. Who was Lynx Quantum? Why were they winning clients without raising Series B? Why were former Redmont executives quietly migrating to this unknown startup? Meanwhile, inside Redmont, whispers turned into meetings. Meetings turned into investigations. I know this because one of their own started feeding us updates. An anonymous source who sent weekly reports about panic emails, staff resignations, and failed digital restructuring initiatives. Then, in the 10th month of operations, we landed our biggest client yet. Argento Group, a multinational logistics conglomerate with one of the largest private portfolios on the East Coast. Redmont had spent 2 years courting them. Lavish dinners, custom binders, private jets to golf retreats. Argento chose us after a 45-minute virtual demo. No gimmicks, no suits, just pure execution. I knew Gregory would find out within hours. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that we'd only just begun. It started with a headline buried halfway down the TechCrunch homepage. Who's behind Lynx Quantum? The mystery startup outperforming Wall Street. At first, I thought it would fizzle out. Another speculative piece tossed into the digital wind. But it didn't, because the numbers were undeniable. Lynx Quantum had quietly secured over $600 million in assets under management in under 12 months. We hadn't done a single press tour, hadn't raised traditional funding, hadn't even published a white paper. And yet, we were beating the best, Redmont and Company, once the untouchable cornerstone of conservative wealth, was bleeding contracts and scrambling to contain what they still believed was a market trend. But in private forums, Slack channels, and LinkedIn whisper networks, the question kept echoing louder. Who the hell is running this thing? And then someone made the connection. A Stanford lecture. A keynote I'd given 18 months ago on algorithmic ethics in financial AI had resurfaced. Someone had pulled the video, compared the language, matched a few product principles, and drew a conclusion that hit Reddit by storm. Isabella Quinn, the adopted daughter of Gregory Redmont, is Lynx Quantum CEO? The comment had 12,000 upvotes in 4 hours. By noon, hashtag Lynx Revealed was trending on Twitter. By sunset, my inbox had over 400 interview requests. Bloomberg, Wired, CNBC, The Wall Street Journal, even Good Morning America wanted a slot. I didn't answer any of them. Not at first. I was too busy watching the quiet unraveling of Redmont and Company. Their LinkedIn presence shifted overnight, from polished infographics to frantic reposts. Their digital division pushed out a campaign about reclaiming innovation, which looked suspiciously like our homepage, minus the functionality. And then came the final straw, the SEC investigation. It hit like a thunderclap across the industry. A whistleblower from inside Redmont had provided damning evidence of manipulated client returns, shadow accounts for high-net-worth insiders, and a toxic internal culture fueled by nepotism and non-disclosure threats. The headlines wrote themselves. Redmont faces federal scrutiny over fraud, preferential treatment, and ethics violations. They didn't name me. They didn't have to, because by now everyone already knew. I was no longer the invisible girl in the corner office. I was the woman whose company had sparked a regulatory reckoning. And the phone call that confirmed it came from someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Margaret, my adoptive mother. Her voice was quiet, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping house. He saw it, she whispered. Gregory, the articles. He's locked himself in his study. No one's seen him all day. I didn't respond. What was there to say? I'd spent most of my life wondering what it would feel like to finally be seen, to prove I was more than a name on their Christmas cards, more than the outsider they dressed up for donor dinners. And now I knew, but it wasn't triumph I felt. Not really. It was stillness, because this was never about revenge. It was about finally ending the story they'd written for me, and writing one of my own. The studio lights were warmer than I expected. I sat in the center of the stage, microphone clipped to my charcoal gray blazer, palms steady against the armrests. The host, a woman with the kind of voice that made America listen at 7 p.m., smiled across at me, but I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about the millions of people watching from their living rooms, wondering who I really was. Tonight, she began, we're speaking with Isabella Quinn, founder and CEO of Lynx Quantum, the AI firm that's not only transforming fintech, but, some say, dismantling an empire. I didn't flinch. Let them say it. She leaned in slightly. Is it true that you're the adopted daughter of Gregory Redmont? I met her eyes. Calm. Measured. Yes. A beat of silence. Why keep that part of your life private? I didn't keep it private, I replied. I just stopped asking for permission to exist. The audience didn't applaud. Not yet. They were listening too intently. And now, the host said, your company is disrupting the very firm that dismissed you. It's not about disruption, I said evenly, though we both knew it was. It's about creating systems that serve people traditional finance overlooks, those without generational wealth, without connections, without the Redmont name. This time the applause did come. Loud, unapologetic. She asked about the rise of Lynx Quantum, the hiring philosophy, the stealth strategy, the AI architecture. I answered clearly, confidently. No bitterness, no barbs, just the truth. By the end of the segment, I had said everything I needed to say. The next morning, our website crashed from traffic. We received 513 partnership requests in less than 24 hours. Our valuation doubled overnight. Series C inquiries flooded in from Silicon Valley and Singapore. My team worked around the clock just to sort through the legitimate offers from the performative ones. Tech Twitter declared me the most lethal mind on Wall Street. A quote from the interview, I stopped asking for permission to exist, was printed on t-shirts before the week ended. But none of that mattered as much as the notification I received 3 days later. A message on the still active Redmont family group chat. From Damon. You betrayed us. I didn't respond. What was there to defend? They had used my silence as proof that I was irrelevant. They had weaponized my gratitude, demanded obedience in exchange for scraps, and told me over and over that I didn't belong. And now that I had proven the opposite, not by screaming, but by building, they called it betrayal. That wasn't my problem anymore. But there was still one final thread left. An envelope, cream-colored, embossed with gold. The Redmont Foundation Annual Gala. No note, no apology, just a time and place. 7 p.m. Saturday. The Metropolitan Club. They thought I wouldn't come. They thought I'd ignore it, let the moment pass, leave the victory unspoken. But I had one last thing to say. Not in an interview, not online. To them, face to face. The Metropolitan Club hadn't changed. Same marble columns, same chandeliers shaped like falling stars, same sea of pearls and champagne and polite cruelty dressed in couture. For years, I had entered through the side door, escorted by someone else's last name. But not tonight. Tonight I arrived alone. The matte black Tesla Model S plaid hummed to a stop at the curb. Valet boys in crimson jackets straightened when they saw me step out, sleek black gown catching just enough of the streetlight to make them pause. I handed over the keys with a simple nod and climbed the marble steps that had once made my palms sweat. This time I didn't hesitate. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with the low, curated hum of wealth and legacy. Names floated in the air. Old money, new deals, and gossip disguised as praise. My entrance sliced through it all like a scalpel. Heads turned. Conversations stalled. And then the whispers began. Is that her? She actually came? She looks powerful. Let them whisper. I moved through the room without stopping. No eye contact. No greetings. Just presence. Margaret found me first, my adoptive mother, in a pearl gray gown and the same frozen smile she had worn at my high school graduation. You look stunning, she said softly. Let's not pretend this changes anything, I replied. She nodded, eyes dropping. Damon and Julian were near the bar. Damon stiffened the moment he saw me. Julian choked slightly on his drink. His eyes flicked to my wrist, to the sleek, minimal smartwatch I was wearing. One of ours. He recognized the design, though I doubted he understood what it could do. It wasn't meant for people like them. I didn't stop for them. I walked straight to the terrace. Gregory stood there, alone, overlooking the Manhattan skyline as if he could still command the city from memory. The man who had once called me pathetic girl didn't turn as I approached. You came, he finally said, voice tight. I did. He turned to face me then, older than I remembered, or maybe just smaller. You've made quite an impact. I didn't speak. He cleared his throat. The company is hemorrhaging. Your brothers, they're not equipped for this world. We need your expertise. And there it was. Not an apology, not even acknowledgement, just a request, a plea, as if the wound he'd opened with those words in the boardroom could be cauterized by convenience. I met his gaze, steady, clear. You once told me I was never the brilliant one, I said, just a pathetic girl trying too hard to belong. He didn't deny it. And now, I continued, gesturing toward the glittering ballroom, the thinning crowds, the dynasty he'd built on bloodlines. You want my help? His lips parted, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but I wasn't done. I'm not here to save you, Gregory. He blinked. I built something without you. While you were dismissing me, I was innovating. While you were excluding me, I was becoming everything you swore I couldn't be. The silence between us stretched thin. Then I stepped closer, not out of kindness, but for clarity. You were right about one thing, I said softly. I'm not like you. I turned to leave, and just before I re-entered the ballroom, I added, and I'm grateful for that. I walked back through the ballroom without looking back. I didn't need to see Gregory's face again. I didn't need to hear Damon's half-formed excuses or watch Julian pretend none of this was happening. I didn't need Margaret's careful silences or Alan's weak attempt at diplomacy. I had spent enough years deciphering their avoidance, trying to translate their indifference into something I could live with. Not anymore. Now, I didn't need them to move aside. They just did. People stepped away without realizing it, parting instinctively, as if the room had shifted around me. Whispers followed my every step, nervous glances, some curious, some reverent, some laced with guilt. But I didn't smile. This wasn't a victory lap. This was closure. Outside, the Tesla waited under the glow of the street lamps. Quiet, certain. I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door with a gentle click, and let the silence settle. For a moment, I looked in the rearview mirror, not at the club behind me, not at the marble steps or the glittering windows, but at the reflection of the girl I used to be, the one who sat through board meetings without speaking, the one who double-checked every email for tone, the one who stayed late, volunteered first, and smiled through the ache of being excluded. She looked at me and I looked back, and for the first time, I smiled, because she wasn't fighting anymore. She was thriving. She was no longer asking for a seat at their table. She had built a table of her own, glass and steel and code, with no room for bloodlines and empty legacy. And she wasn't alone. Lynx Quantum now operated across 4 countries. We just opened a second office in Singapore. Our AI system was being piloted by three major global banks. We had become the blueprint, and I, the adopted girl they once mocked in a boardroom, was now the youngest female CEO of a multi-billion-dollar fintech empire. But that wasn't the real win. The real win was waking up every day knowing I didn't owe my success to anyone's last name. Knowing that I had created a space where people like me, outsiders, misfits, the overlooked, could lead, innovate, and finally breathe. That night, as I crossed the bridge back to my home, city lights streaking across the windshield, I whispered something I had never dared to say out loud before. I'm free. No more waiting for permission. No more apologizing for being too driven, too direct, too much. I was Isabella Quinn. Not the adopted daughter, not the charity case, not the pathetic girl, just the woman who rewrote the algorithm and ensured that no one like her would ever be erased again